Hello everyone. Today I'm going to present the paper by Dechow, and Schrand, Understanding Earnings Quality, a review of the proxies, their determinants, and their consequences. This is a paper published on Journal of Accounting and Economics in 2010. My name is Nancy Du, and I'm going to present it for our archival seminar in WSU for the spring semester in 2015. To begin with, let's talk about what this study is about. This is a review paper on earnings quality. They reviewed basically 300 articles on earnings quality, and they were trying to summarize how those practices are being used in the literature, and they're going to discuss the causes of variation in the measures. Those are the determinants of those measures, as well as their consequences. Now let's talk about why this paper is important. First of all, it serves as a very useful reference for any researchers who is interested in this area or trying to explore a new field. So they can always go over the reference and particular topic they're interested in and identify what has been done, what could have been done, and for future research. So this is a very good reference for any research in this particular area. Second, this paper summarized at least 5 areas of research that has received little attention, and this point out the directions for future research. For example, how managers choose between competing objectives to report only one earnings number. They only have one bottom line earnings number, and they might have competing objectives either for external reporting or internal executive compensation. They have to trade off those competing objectives because they can only report one earnings number. And more importantly, this review paper shows inconsistency among those proxies we're going to talk about later by identifying cases where earnings quality proxy do not exhibit convergent validity. Because if they measure the same fundamental construct, they're supposed to show convergent validity. If they did not, this suggests that each individual proxy measures distinct feature of the decision usefulness of earnings, and they may not measure the same fundamental construct. So the conclusion is there's no one single best proxy for earnings quality. Instead, the proxy's usefulness depends on the decision context. So those are the major contributions of this review paper. Next, we can talk about the roadmap of the study, how they organize their topics in a very sensible way. So first, they start with the commentary on the state of the literature. They have a few comments on what has been done in the earnings quality literature and what could have been done. And next, they provide evidence on individual proxies for earnings quality, and we'll see how they classify them into different categories and provide insights on every single proxy for earnings quality. Third, they also provide some cross-country studies which shed light on some of those some aspects will not be captured by a single country study. And the last two are the determinants of earnings quality as well as the consequences of earnings quality. So determinants of earnings quality, we'll talk about what are the factors that might influence or cause the variation in earnings quality, and the consequences perspective, we'll talk about what will be the impact of earnings quality on other outcomes. First, a few comments on the states of the existing literature. So basically, they also talk about two most important observations. The first observation is that although the firm's earnings quality depends on both the firm's financial performance and their accounting system that measures the earnings, little evidence has been shown on how fundamental performance affect earnings quality. So this is the first observation. Second, another observation is that there's no measure of earnings quality that is superior for all decision models. There's also no single best proxy for earnings quality. So those are the two comments they have on the states of the existing literature. Followed, the author organized our earnings quality proxy into three broad categories. The first one is the property of earnings. That will be the consistency of earnings or smoothness of earnings. Those are the property of earnings itself. The second category will be the investor's responsiveness to earnings. That will be the ERC, the earnings response coefficient, and how investors react to those earnings. The third category will be the external indicator of earnings misstatement, will be the fraud case identified or restatement afterwards. So those are the three broad categories the authors organized to talk about for every single proxy. So they did provide a very detailed analysis of each of the earning quality proxy, and they describe how those proxies is commonly used or measured in the literature, and also they outline those variable specific conclusion about the unique feature of those variable as a proxy for earnings quality. And they also talk about the pros and cons of a particular earnings quality proxy. For those country and cross-country studies, they examine cross-country variation in earnings quality and also highlight what we can learn only from cross-country study, but not from the study that use firm-level data within one country. And it also identifying findings that might conflict with those based on the analysis of the U.S. firm only. And when we talk about the determinants of earnings quality, in this section, they talk about the features of a firm and how the accounting measurement system that might cause the variation in the earnings outcome. So in this section, earnings quality proxies is a dependent variable in the analysis. And they identified a couple of factors that might influence earnings quality, which include firm characteristics, financial reporting practice, governance and controls, auditors, equity market incentives, and external factors. So those are the factors that might influence earnings quality. So for consequences of earnings quality, they examine the impact of earnings quality on other outcomes. For example, how the earnings quality might influence the profitability of acquirer on acquisitions. And in this section, earnings quality proxy is an independent variable in the analysis, and those are the outcomes identified by the prior literature that might be influenced by earnings quality, which include litigation propensity, audit opinion, market evaluation, real activities including disclosure, executive compensation, labor market outcome, a firm's costs or debt capital, and as well as the analyst forecast accuracy. So those are the outcomes that might be influenced by earnings quality and also point out for the direction for future research. And that's all for my presentation. Thank you.